Welcome back to the deep dive. I really want you to picture a scene with me today to just set the vibe before we get into this.
Oh yeah, setting the scene is totally crucial for this one.
Right. So picture a Monday night. Specifically, it is Monday, May 23, 1966.
Very specific.
Yeah, it's exactly 9 p.m. And we are in Elmira, New York, in this fairly standard, ordinary living room. It's quiet. The lights are probably dim.
Like the classic mid-century living room setup.
Exactly. And there is a woman sitting there, Jane Roberts. She's holding a cigarette, maybe watching the smoke curl up toward the ceiling. She takes a drag, her eyes close, and suddenly
Gets weird.
yeah, suddenly the person in the chair isn't really Jane anymore. Her voice drops an octave, the whole cadence changes. It becomes, precise, authoritative, and maybe just a little bit mischievous.
Because she is speaking for Seth.
She is speaking for Seth, and it's just the ultimate atmospheric setting for a ghost story.
It really is.
Yeah.
Except, it's not a story. It's an actual transcript.
Yeah.
And what we are diving into today is session 261 from the early sessions, book 6 of the Seth Material.
Right.
And I have to say, of all the sessions we've covered, this one feels less like a high-minded philosophy lecture and more like a technical manual.
A technical manual, like a how-to guide.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically a mechanic's guide to the human soul.
Yeah.
Specifically, how to drive it.
Oh, I love that. Because usually when you get into topics like out-of-body experiences or astral projection or whatever, the text gets very flowery.
Oh, incredibly flowery. Lots of vague metaphors.
Yeah, it's all misty realms and high vibrations and spiritual light. But Seth, in the session, he's talking about physics.
He really is. He's talking about electromagnetic connections, chemical energy, and the specific gear you need to wear.
Right, depending on how far you want to travel from your physical body.
It is remarkably grounded. We are going to answer a central mystery today for you guys. When we sleep or when we project, how do we actually do it?
Is it just dreaming?
Exactly. Or are there specific vehicles, like actual body forms, that we inhabit? And perhaps most importantly for anyone listening who's ever tried to learn a difficult new skill, we are going to talk about the psychological blocks we put in our own way.
Oh, man, we are definitely getting to the window incident. That story is the absolute highlight of the session for me.
It is so funny.
It's hilarious, but it's also the perfect example of how our brains try to sabotage us even when we're doing something supernatural.
It really is a profound lesson wrapped in a complete comedy of errors. But before we unzip the fabric of reality here, we do need to handle a little housekeeping.
Right, the mandatory stuff.
Yeah, so we are diving deep into the Seth Material today, which is published by the New Awareness Network. And we need to state clearly for the record that this deep dive is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes.
Exactly. We aren't selling you the secrets of the universe here.
No, we are just unpacking the manual that Seth dictated back in 1966.
Right. And honestly, if this conversation hooks you, and it absolutely should, you really need to go to the source.
You really do.
We are analyzing the text, sure, but there is nothing quite like reading the raw transcripts yourself to get the full impact. You can find them at sepcenter.com/the early sessions.
Definitely go support the publisher.
For sure. But okay, let's get back into that living room. 9 p.m., Seth starts talking. And he opens with a concept that I found, well, a little confusing at first. He talks about camouflage.
Yes.
Okay.
Camouflage. This is the foundational concept of session 261.
Yeah.
If you don't grasp this, the rest of the mechanical stuff we talk about today just won't make any sense.
Right.
Seth makes a really fascinating, almost psychological argument right out of the gate here.
Yeah.
He says that you, as a consciousness, as an identity, literally cannot conceive of yourself without a body.
Wait, let me stop you there. Cannot conceive. You mean if I died right now or if I popped out of my body during an out-of-body experience, I wouldn't just be...
Just a floating point of view?
Yeah, or a ball of light. I wouldn't just be me.
Well, you would be you, but your mind would absolutely panic.
Really?
Yeah, Seth argues that we are so deeply addicted to physical reality. We are so used to having hands and feet and a face staring back at us in the mirror that if we found ourselves in a total void without them, we wouldn't be able to process our own existence.
Oh, wow. So we would just freak out.
We would feel like we were completely disappearing. We'd lose our grip on our identity.
So we need a container to feel real.
Exactly. It's a psychological crutch.
Mm.
Seth says, and I actually want to quote this directly because it's the key to the whole session. He says, "These body forms, however, are necessary camouflages, for you cannot yet think of identity without some kind of physical body."
Okay, but camouflage usually implies hiding from something. Like, I'm wearing camo so the deer don't see me in the woods. But he's saying we wear bodies so we can see ourselves.
That is ideally put, yeah. Think
Yeah.
of it like a computer operating system.
Okay, I like a tech analogy.
Right, so you can't speak binary code. You can't interact directly with the raw electricity of your computer's processor. That would be impossible. So what do you need?
I need a desktop.
You need a desktop. You need icons. You need a little mouse cursor to click on things. The body form is essentially your mouse cursor.
That is such a good way to look at it.
It allows you to interact with a completely different dimension without losing your sense of self. It translates the raw, blinding energy of the universe into a format your human ego can actually handle without short-circuiting.
That makes a ton of sense. So when we sleep, or when people say they travel in their sleep, they aren't just invisible vapor floating around.
No, not at all.
They are subconsciously building a specific cursor to navigate that dream world.
Precisely. And in this session, Seth basically opens up the garage and shows us that there isn't just one standard model of cursor. There are three.
Three different bodies.
Three distinct body forms that we use, depending entirely on our skill level and where exactly we want to go.
Okay, let's walk through the showroom then. What is the entry-level model? Because I have a feeling that's the one I'm driving every single night.
Yes, that would be Form 1. Seth calls it the dream body. He also refers to it as the astral body in some other context, but let's stick to dream body for clarity today.
Got it. Dream body.
This is your default setting. When you go to sleep tonight and you have a really vivid dream where you're walking down the street or you're back in high school taking a math test you totally didn't study for.
Ugh, the classic stress dream.
Exactly. You are highly likely operating in Form 1.
And what are the specs on this model? Is it a sleek sports car? A heavy minivan?
It's definitely more like a reliable, heavy four-door sedan. It feels physical.
Yeah.
And that is the absolute crucial point here.
It feels real.
Yes. If you pinch yourself while you're in the dream body, it might actually hurt. If you touch a wooden table, it feels solid and rough. It has mass, or rather, it deeply believes it has mass.
That totally explains why dreams feel so incredibly real while you're in the middle of them. You don't feel like a ghostly spirit. You just feel like regular you.
Right. But here's the catch. Because it mimics your physical body so perfectly, it carries practically all the limitations of your physical body right along with it.
So you're stuck with the same rules.
Mostly, yes. Seth notes that levitation is possible in this form, but on a very limited basis.
Oh my God, yes. I have this recurring dream where I'm trying to fly, but I can only get like maybe 3 feet off the ground.
The hover dream.
Yes. I'm clapping my arms, I'm straining my core, and I'm just skimming the pavement. It's honestly exhausting.
That is classic dream body physics at work. Your mind is essentially saying, okay, we can bend the rules a tiny little bit because it's a dream, but gravity is still a thing we have to respect. You are literally fighting your own ingrained belief system.
That is wild.
And here is the biggest limitation of Form 1, which Seth is very clear about. You generally cannot go through walls.
Wait, really? It's a dream. Why can't I just walk through a wall?
Because the dream body is constructed specifically to be a perfect copy of the physical body.
Okay.
And in the physical waking world, walls are solid.
Right.
So in Form 1, your consciousness rigidly enforces that physical rule. You see a wall, and your mind says, solid object. Do not pass. You will bump your head.
So I'm the one creating the wall's solidity.
You are.
Yeah.
You are trapped by your own expectations of how reality works. You are playing a video game, but you've somehow convinced yourself that the real-world laws of physics apply to your character. So you're just stuck in the room.
That is so frustrating to think about. I've had so many dreams where I'm locked in a room, panicking, frantically looking for a key. And if I were just a slightly more enlightened spirit, I should just be able to phase right through the door.
If you knew how to switch gears, yes, absolutely. Which brings us perfectly to Form 2.
Okay, Form 2. Give it to me.
Form 2 is the mind form.
Mind form. Now that sounds a lot sleeker. Is this the upgrade we've been looking for?
This is definitely the upgrade. Seth explains that the mind form is the vehicle you use when you want to enter a completely different dimension. Or, and I found this part fascinating, when you have appointments with others in the dream state.
Wait, appointments? Like meet me at the Astral coffee shop at midnight?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
If you are sharing a conscious dream space with another person, or you're traveling to a specific learning plane of existence to gather information, you shift into the mind form.
Interesting. Does it still look like a body?
It still looks physical, yes.
Yeah.
You still have arms and legs because, remember the first rule, you still need that camouflage to feel sane. But the physics engine powering the experience has fundamentally changed.
So what could I do in Form 2?
Well, in this form, you actually can walk right through physical matter. Walls, heavy doors, literal mountains, they don't stop you at all.
Okay, so this is straight up ghost mode, or God mode.
Right. And true levitation is finally unlocked. You aren't just hovering 3 feet off the pavement anymore, you are actually flying. You can travel anywhere you want within the solar system.
Just the solar system? That seems like kind of an arbitrary boundary. Like, you can go check out Mars, but Jupiter's fine, but Alpha Centauri is completely off limits.
Well, it's not really about physical distance, it's more about frequency and familiar vibration. The mind form is tuned to our local system, our local neighborhood of reality.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
But within that local system, your consciousness is vastly expanded. You have a much better grasp of the past, the present, and the future. You aren't just blindly reacting to a random dream plot anymore. You have real agency. You're more awake inside the experience.
So if I find myself flying high over the Grand Canyon in a dream and I suddenly realize, hey, I can swoop straight down through those solid rocks without crashing, I've probably successfully shifted from Form 1 into Form 2.
Exactly. You've shed some of that heavy physical weight and belief you've upgraded.
Right.
But then there is the final one, the absolute luxury model, Form 3.
The true projection form.
Yes. This is serious, high-level stuff. In this form, you are dealing with a much, much higher frequency of consciousness. You can finally travel beyond the solar system.
So Alpha Centauri is back on the menu.
It is. You can perceive the past, present, and future of completely other systems, not just our own. You are essentially acting as a universal traveler.
That sounds incredible, obviously, but also kind of terrifying. I feel like if my brain popped into Form 3 right this second, it would just melt. I wouldn't have the slightest idea how to process seeing the future of another galaxy.
And you are spot on, because Seth actually warns about exactly that. He mentions a phenomenon that we call the switch, or the jolt.
The jolt.
Yeah. He says it is entirely possible to start your night in the dream body, Form 1, get some confidence, shift up into the mind form, Form 2, and then really accelerate into the true projection of Form 3.
Okay, shifting through the gears.
Right. But if you are way out there in the deep cosmos in Form 3 and something suddenly startles you, or you just decide to come back to your body way too fast.
What happens? Do you get stuck?
No. But if you skip the deceleration process, if you skip Form 2 and slam directly from Form 3 back into the Form 1 dream body or waking state, Seth calls it a considerable jolt.
Oh, man. Like getting the bends, astral bends.
That is a very apt comparison. You are taking this massive, widely expanded consciousness where you know everything and can see everywhere, and you're frantically trying to shove it back into a tiny, limited, heavy physical container in a fraction of a second.
That sounds incredibly painful.
It's both physically and mentally jarring. It shakes you up.
It's like trying to pour a gallon of water into a shot glass in 1 second. It's going to be messy and violent.
Exactly. Seth is literally giving us safety protocols here. He's saying, warning, downshifting from 5th gear to 1st gear without hitting the clutch may cause severe spiritual whiplash.
I really love that he includes these warnings. It reinforces the idea that this isn't just fluffy magic, it's actual mechanics. There are rules to this reality.
And what I love most is that Seth emphasizes that the form doesn't dictate your ability. Your ability dictates the form, meaning you naturally wear the suit that fits your current level of spiritual competence. You don't get the keys to Form 3 until you can handle it.
Which brings us, I think, perfectly to the competent, or maybe the lack thereof, of Jane Roberts herself.
Oh, yes.
Because we have this grand, beautiful cosmic theory of body forms, and then we have the window incident.
The window incident.
Yeah.
It is pure comedy, but deeply, deeply instructive.
You have to set this up for the listeners, because this is the exact moment where I realized, oh, these are just real normal people dealing with this crazy cosmic stuff.
They really are. So here is the context. Jane has been doing her homework. She's recently been reading a book by an author named Oliver Fox, specifically on the topic of astral projection.
So she's trying to learn how to do it deliberately.
Exactly. She wants to prove it to herself. And on this particular occasion we're talking about, she actually achieves it.
Yeah.
She manages a deliberate, conscious projection out of her physical body.
Okay, so she's out. She's hovering in her bedroom.
Yeah.
Massive success.
Yes. She is floating. She has achieved the primary goal. But now she wants to actually leave the room. She wants to go outside and explore the neighborhood.
Naturally.
But here's the problem. She is floating there, and she is facing a completely blank wall. The actual physical window of her bedroom, the glass and the wood sash, is located behind her head.
Okay, so logically speaking, she should just turn around and float out the actual window. Or, since she's a literal spirit in an astral form right now, she should just float directly through the blank wall in front of her.
You would certainly think so. But remember what we just discussed about Form 1?
The dream body.
Right. She is still operating in that heavy, reality-mimicking state. She looks at the blank wall, and her subconscious mind immediately says, nope, I can't walk through that. That is a solid wall. Walls are solid.
So she's stuck. She's all dressed up in her astral body with nowhere to go.
She panics a little bit. She simply doesn't have the mental confidence to imagine herself passing through the physical drywall.
But she still really wants to go outside.
Yes. She feels this overwhelming compulsion to go forward. So, to resolve this massive psychological conflict between I must go outside and I cannot walk through solid walls, her subconscious mind does something simultaneously brilliant and completely ridiculous.
I love this part.
It hallucinates a window right in front of her on the blank wall.
She literally built a fake window in her mind just so she could politely open it and leave.
She built a symbol. A completely unnecessary symbol. And Seth analyzes this whole event in the session with such incredibly dry humor.
What did she say?
He says, and I quote, "The window was a quite valid fabrication of his own. He did not have the confidence to imagine himself, you see, passing through the physical walls."
A valid fabrication. That is
Not-
such a polite, clinical way of saying you completely tricked yourself because you were too scared of drywall.
But the crazy thing is, it worked.
It did work.
She saw the window, which absolutely was not there in physical reality. And because her brain recognized it as a window, her mind said, structural exit. I am allowed to go through that.
And she did.
She climbed right through a pure hallucination to escape a room she could have just effortlessly floated out of.
That is just so funny to me. You are this majestic, multidimensional spirit. You are completely free of the bounds of gravity. And yet you're hovering there like, ooh, drywall, scary stuff. I better install a phantom sash window so I can climb out like a normal person.
It really highlights the absurdity of the human condition. We carry our mundane limitations with us, even into the divine. But Seth's point here is actually very sweet and forgiving.
How so?
He's basically saying, look, if you need training wheels to ride the bike, use the training wheels. If your mind absolutely cannot accept the reality of walking through a solid wall, but it can comfortably accept climbing through an open window, then your mind will kindly create a window to facilitate the experience for you.
It's a workaround. It's a psychological hack.
Exactly. And it teaches us a massive lesson about these states of consciousness. Reality over there is plastic. It responds instantly to your beliefs.
If you believe you are trapped by a wall, you are trapped.
Right. And if you firmly believe there is a window, suddenly there is a window.
You know, it really makes me wonder how many times in our actual everyday waking lives we do this exact same thing.
All the time.
We think we hit a solid wall in our career or our relationships, so we just stop dead in our tracks. But maybe if we just hallucinated a door or simply realized the wall wasn't as solid as we thought it was.
We can just walk right through it. That is the deeper philosophical point Seth is making. We build windows where we don't need them because we are inherently afraid to test the true boundaries of what is possible for us.
That's a really powerful takeaway. But speaking of boundaries and testing things, we really need to talk about the domestic side of this session.
Yes, the furniture dispute.
Because nothing, and I mean nothing, grounds high-strung, lofty metaphysical talk quite like a good old-fashioned husband and wife argument about bedroom furniture arrangement.
Oh, the North Rule. This is a classic, hilarious conflict between metaphysical optimization and basic interior design.
So Seth just casually drops this little nugget of practical advice in the middle of the session. He says, "You will find all projections much easier if your head is to the north."
Simple enough, right?
Right. North-facing bed equals better, smoother astral travel. It's like feng shui for the out-of-body soul.
And it makes scientific sense in the context of his teachings. And it has to do with aligning your physical body with the magnetic fields of the earth, presumably to help strengthen that electromagnetic connection we touched on earlier. Seth is very practical about these things. To him, it's not magic. It's just magnetism and physics.
But there's a slight problem in the Roberts household.
A very mundane problem.
Jane, being a normal human being who lives in a house and occasionally wants it to look nice, had just recently completely rearranged their bedroom. And she moved the bed so it was resting on an east-west axis.
Right, for house cleaning and comfort purposes, apparently. She just liked the way the room flowed better that way.
And Seth, who is looking at this from a multidimensional perspective, is just, he's so dry about it. He's not overtly angry. He's just profoundly disappointed.
He really is. He says to Rob, Rupert will not be happy with this.
Root being his specific name for Jane's greater identity.
Correct. And then Seth delivers this line, which is just pure, unadulterated passive aggression. He says, perhaps the other comforts that the room affords you with the bed in another position is worth it to you for a while.
That is absolute gold. He's basically saying, I mean, if you want your little room to look cute, that's totally fine. I guess you just don't want to explore the cosmos as easily. Up to you guys. Enjoy your subpar sleep positioning.
It perfectly highlights the trade-offs we make. You can have a Pinterest-worthy bedroom, or you can have easy, frictionless cosmic travel. Choose your priority.
So good. But this actually leads into a much more serious point about Jane's overall resistance to some of this material. Because it's not just about her stubbornness with the furniture. Jane also really, really hates the idea of spirit guides.
Yes, she strongly dislikes the concept.
She finds it spooky, right? Or maybe she feels like it makes her look dependent.
I think it's the latter. She is a fiercely independent thinker. She is forging this new path. And she really doesn't want to believe that she needs some ghostly, invisible hand-holding to navigate the dream world safely. It feels like a regression to her. She wants to be entirely self-sufficient.
But Seth pushes back pretty hard on this assumption.
He absolutely does. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He basically says, look, it doesn't matter if you like the idea intellectually or not. It is a fact.
What exactly does he say?
He says, there are indeed others who can help you in such experiences and who often do while you're in the dream state, whether or not you know it.
Wow. So it's not up for debate. You have helpers. Deal with it.
Exactly. And he actually links this need for help back to the physics of connection. He talks of the concept of the silver cord.
Oh, I've heard of that. In a lot of old mystical and esoteric texts, the silver cord is described as this magical, glowing rope that ties your floating soul to your sleeping body so you don't get lost in the ether.
Right. But Seth doesn't use those mystical terms. He uses science words.
Of course he does.
He talks about it as a form of chemical energy. He explains that during an out-of-body experience, there is a very specific chemical reaction happening in the body that maintains an invisible electromagnetic link between the traveling consciousness and the physical form left on the bed.
So it actually is a tether, but a scientific one.
Yes, a physical and chemical tether. And he says this really fascinating line. It is mental energy that makes the chemical energy possible, however.
Okay, so your mind powers the chemical reaction that creates the tether.
Precisely. And this tether is the only thing that pulls you back safely. If that link snaps or breaks completely, you do not return to the physical body.
Which means physical death.
Exactly. So when Seth is talking about relying on guides or orienting your bed to the north to align with magnetic fields, he isn't just giving whimsical spiritual advice. He's talking about actively optimizing a crucial life support system.
Keeping the signal strong so you don't accidentally unplug yourself.
Keeping the connection robust so you can explore the outer limits safely and still wake up in the morning.
Okay, that puts a whole new spin on the bed arrangement. I'd be moving my bed to face north immediately.
Right. Comfort be damned.
Seriously. Okay, so we've covered the deep theory, we've done the psychology, we've done the hilarious furniture arrangement disputes. Now we have to get to the actual proof.
The hard data.
Because you and I can sit here and talk about mind forms and electromagnetic tethers all day long, but for a skeptical listener, is there any concrete evidence that this isn't just Jane's very active imagination?
Enter the envelope experiments.
Yes. This is the part of the deep dive where I always get literal chills. It turns from a philosophy lecture into a paranormal detective story.
It really does. So for the listeners who might be new to this specific protocol, the envelope experiments were a series of rigorous double-blind tests that Rob and Jane conducted to prove her clairvoyant abilities.
How did they work?
Rob, Jane's husband, would select a random physical object, or he would draw a specific picture when Jane was absolutely nowhere around. He would then seal that target inside multiple layers of thick, opaque envelopes.
So there's zero chance she could see it physically.
Zero chance. And then later that night, while in a deep Seth trance, Jane would have to psychically see what was hidden inside the envelope and describe it for the record.
And in this particular session 261, they review the results of Experiment 56.
Yes.
And the setup for Experiment 56 is just so charming and slice of life. It's a warm, sunny day in May. Jane is out in the backyard, laying on a serape, sunbathing.
Just relaxing.
Right. And Rob is upstairs in his art studio on the second floor, looking out the window down at her.
And Rob, being an artist, decides to sketch her. He's looking down from that second-story vantage point, and he's drawing Jane resting on the lawn. But here is the absolutely crucial variable for this experiment. His emotional state? He is highly amused. He's feeling mirth.
Why is he so amused?
Because Jane cannot sit still to save her life. She's fidgeting, she's rolling around, she's constantly swatting at bugs in the grass. Rob is up there trying to capture her likeness on paper, but she is a constantly moving target. So he's just quietly chuckling to himself the whole time he's drawing.
Okay, so that emotion, that mirth, becomes a key hidden data point.
Exactly.
So he finishes the sketch, seals it up securely in the double envelopes, and hides it. That night, the session begins. Seth comes through Jane. And what are the psychic hits?
The hits are frankly staggering.
Yep.
First off, before he even describes a shape or a color, Seth says the word mirth.
Wow.
He doesn't describe the visual drawing first. He hones right in on Rob's specific private emotional state while he was creating the drawing.
That implies telepathy right off the bat.
Yes. But then Seth connects that feeling of mirth to something else entirely. He says, mirth. Yet also a connection with an unpleasant event.
And this is where the detective work gets so good. Rob is thinking, unpleasant event. I was having a great time drawing. What unpleasant event?
Right. So they have to unpack it. What actually happened? Well, earlier that same day, before the sunbathing, some rowdy neighborhood kids had been running recklessly right through Jane's freshly spaded garden.
They were trampling her flowers.
Yeah, they were noisy, they were intrusive, and Jane was incredibly annoyed about it. She actually had to wait for them to finally leave before she could even go out to sunbathe.
So the target envelope somehow contains this complex, layered emotional cocktail. It has Rob's current amusement baked right on top of Jane's lingering annoyance from an hour prior.
And Seth picks up on both distinct emotions flawlessly. It's incredible. It proves he's not just using X-ray vision to see the pencil lines on the paper. He's literally reading the invisible emotional residue of the moment the paper was touched. He's reading the history of the room.
That is wild. But he does see the visual stuff too, right?
Oh, absolutely. He gets incredibly specific. Seth says, the impression now of looking down from a high position.
Which is an exact, literal description of Rob's physical viewpoint from the second-story studio window.
Right. And then he nails the colors. Seth says red.
And Jane was wearing what?
Jane was wearing bright red plaid shorts, and she was sitting directly on a red, white, and blue strobe serape.
Bam! That is a direct hit.
Then Seth goes on to describe the style of the drawing itself. He says he sees wavy lines. He describes them looking like cracks in dry ground or like small winding roads.
And does the sketch look like that?
If you look at the actual sketch, and again, the publisher has all this documented, Rob's sketching style for this particular piece uses these very loose, wavy, continuous lines. Plus, the physical fringe of the serape she was laying on was made of these wavy, twisting tassels.
It matches perfectly, but I have to say, my absolute favorite hit of this entire experiment, the one that really gave me the aha moment, is the invitation.
Yes, the invitation. This is the absolute smoking gun for pure telepathy in this session.
Walk us through it.
So Seth is describing the envelope's contents, and out of nowhere, he says there's an impression of, quote, an invitation to do something or go somewhere or to join.
Now, when they review this later, they look at the drawing. There is obviously no written invitation on the paper. It's just a pencil sketch of a woman lying on a lawn. So at first glance, Rob probably thinks, okay, that's a slight miss. Seth got confused.
Right, it seems like a miss. But then Rob remembers something and confesses. He admits that while he was leaning out at that upstairs window, looking down at his wife enjoying the sun, he actively thought about putting his pencil down and going down to the lawn to join her.
He mentally formulated an invitation.
Exactly. He thought very clearly, I should go down there with her. But he ultimately didn't say it out loud because he decided he wanted to keep painting instead.
He never uttered a single word, but Jane heard it anyway, or Seth heard it.
The thought was real. That is the takeaway here. In the expanded realm of consciousness that Seth is operating in, a private thought is as physically real and tangible as a heavy brick. Rob broadcast an invitation using his mental energy. Seth, tuning into that exact moment in time, received it clearly. The fact that Rob's physical vocal cords never vibrated to speak the words is completely irrelevant.
That is honestly the chilling part of this whole episode for me. It heavily implies that we are just constantly, endlessly broadcasting our most private thoughts out into the ether. And anyone with the right receiver or the right body form can just pick them up like a radio station.
It completely dismantles our conventional idea of mental privacy.
Right.
But at the exact same time, it beautifully validates the idea of universal connection. We are not actually sealed off from each other inside these fleshy skulls. We are leaking information and connection constantly.
That is both beautiful and slightly terrifying if you have intrusive thoughts.
Ah, definitely.
And just briefly before we wrap up the evidence portion, they actually did a second experiment that same night, didn't they? Experiment 65.
Yes, very briefly. We don't need to go as deep into this one, but it was a target provided by a third party, a Dr. In-string. So it was a completely blind target for both Rob and Jane. Neither of them knew what was in the envelope.
A true double blind.
Exactly. Yeah. And even so, Seth effortlessly describes seeing turnstiles. He describes an English-type mansion. And he specifically notes that he is looking at a picture of a place rather than the physical place itself.
Wow.
It was a crucial validation for them that this remote viewing capability isn't just limited to Rob and Jane's immediate household or their shared emotional bond. They can effectively reach out and accurately view targets they have zero physical or emotional connection to.
It's just layer after layer of validation in this session. You have the deep philosophy of the camouflage bodies, the exact mechanics of the 3 different forms, the highly relatable domestic comedy of the hallucinated window and the misaligned bed, and then you cap it all off with the hard, undeniable data of the envelope experiments.
It really is the complete package. It fires on all cylinders. And honestly, I think that's exactly why the Seth Material has endured and remained so influential since the 1960s.
Because it's not just theory.
Right. It's not just high-flown rhetoric from a guru on a mountain. It's deeply grounded in the messy, funny, very specific reality of being a human being trying to figure things out in a living room in upstate New York.
Let's try to synthesize all of this. What does this all actually mean for the listener sitting at home right now? We've talked about astral body forms, we've talked about imaginary windows, and red plaid shorts. What is the big practical takeaway here?
The big takeaway is that you are a vast, multidimensional being, whether you consciously realize it on a daily basis or not. You are not permanently trapped inside your physical body.
You have options.
You have a whole garage full of other vehicles at your disposal. Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, just waiting for you to practice and learn how to drive them.
And the only thing really stopping us from taking them out for a spin is the window.
The window that wasn't there. The mental barriers we face, whether it's fear, a lack of confidence, or just the stubborn, ingrained belief that walls are solid and we can't pass through them, these are entirely self-imposed mental constructs.
We are the ones locking our own doors.
We carry our physical limitations right into our limitless spiritual potential. We limit ourselves simply because we are deeply conditioned to think we have to.
That's an incredibly liberating thought, though. The wall isn't real. The hallucinated window isn't actually necessary. You can just go.
You can, but, maybe keep your head pointed to the north while you try, just in case.
Right. Use every single electromagnetic advantage you can get. And hey, if you find yourself struggling, if you need a guide to help you figure out the clutch on Form 2, don't be too proud or stubborn to ask for one, even if you think the concept is a little spooky.
Absolutely. The help is always there, if you are willing to accept it.
Now, if this deep dive today has sparked your curiosity, and I really, really hope it has because this stuff is fascinating, you owe it to yourself to go directly to the source material.
You really do. We are just skimming the very surface here today. You need to read the books.
Yes. Visit the New Awareness Network. Their website is sethcenter.com. Specifically, you want to look for the early sessions. Reading these raw transcripts, seeing Jane and Rob literally figure this all out in real time, making mistakes, arguing about beds. There's just nothing else like it out there.
It's a massive, incredible library of human consciousness just waiting for you to explore it.
sethcenter.com/the early sessions. Please go there. Support the publisher who does the hard work to keep this vital material alive and accessible for all of us.
Definitely.
So here is our final thought for you tonight. The provocative little nugget to chew on as you turn off the lights and drift off to sleep.
Tonight, when you finally close your eyes and you suddenly find yourself standing in the middle of a vivid dream,
Yeah.
pay close attention. Look down at your hands. Try to jump up and fly.
And if you find yourself helplessly hovering just 3 feet off the ground, or if you find yourself panicking because you're trapped inside a locked room, stop and ask yourself, which body am I currently in?
And then ask the really important question. What would actually happen if I simply decided the wall wasn't there?
Are you spending your energy building windows where you don't even need them?
Sweet dreams, everyone.
See you out in the astral.